Hello, my treasures. It's time for the remaining neutral cards for the March of the Lich King Hearthstone set. So let's begin. The first one is going to be Brittle Skin Zombie, which is a 3-cost undead minion for attack, 3 HP, death rattle. If it's your opponent's turn, deal 3 damage to them. For a 3-drop minion, this actually doesn't look that bad, to be honest. It has a nice enough body where you would want to play something like this. It also has a really powerful death rattle if you want to use it to just keep going to your opponent's face and force them to actually deal with it. And whenever they do, it's going to deal 3 damage to them, which is actually pretty cool. It also revisits some old ideas from Naxxramas and some of the older sets that had a bunch of undeads in it, where they got additional effects if they died on your opponent's turn instead of your own turn. Overall, just a really well-rounded card, and this will probably see some play in some type of undead deck. The next card revealed is Arms Dealer, which is a 1-cost, 1 attack, 2 HP undead minion. After you summon a undead, give it +1 attack. If there's ways to generate a bunch of undead tokens, this card will be incredibly playable and incredibly annoying to actually deal with. This is actually pretty good in Death Knight in particular, because the token from your hero power will always be a 2/1 instead of a 1/1, and it'll have charge, which makes a card like this incredibly annoying, or any type of a Death Knight deck do not want to run if you're going down the aggro base route. There's enough really cheap undead minions where this could become really prevalent. I do like the idea that they gave it only 2 HP to make it a little bit easier for some classes to actually deal with before it gets out of control. And even if we don't see any token generating undead minions, I do think this card will probably see a lot of play, because it does look like it has a lot of potential even if you don't need that many tokens. It's just a really good aggro card, which is not something that I like to say, but it is what it is. The next card revealed is Foul Egg, which is a 1-cost, 0 attack, 2 HP undead minion. With the death rattle, summon a 3/3 undead chicken. I think this is the cheapest egg minion that we've ever actually seen in the game, and if you have a way to easily trigger its death rattle quickly, then this card is great. However, I do think this is basically, you play it down and it does nothing for a few turns, which might make it a little bit worse in a lot of decks that you might want to normally run this in. It also depends on how many board buffs or hand buffs that we actually see. And the last card that got revealed, I guess, would go perfect in combination with this, because it does give it +1 attack. I don't know, it might be a lot better than I originally thought, because we have seen a little bit of board buffs already. So for the next card revealed is Draki Embalmer, which is a 3-cost, 3 attack, 4 HP undead minion. With the battle cry, give an undead minion reborn. This is exactly what I was talking about, I think, in 2 videos ago, where I was very much shocked that we did not see a card that gives a undead minion reborn. I didn't really expect it to actually be a neutral card, but I guess if there are a lot of classes that are going to do undead synergy, it makes more sense to put it as a neutral card instead of a class card, so everyone can actually have some fun with this. It does cost a little bit too much, in my opinion. I would have probably preferred to see it as like a 2-drop with maybe like 2 attack and 1 HP, just to make it a little bit more balanced. But I do think this will probably see play if there is a key really big undead minion that you want to duplicate with the reborn tag on it. Outside of that, this card is still really good just in any aggro based deck, because it makes any minion you want to protect really difficult to actually kill, which could be the matter of life and death for your opponent on a following up turn. All right, now for the next card revealed, it is Corporeal, which is a 2-cost, 5 attack, 5 HP undead minion. After this minion attacks, destroy it. Perfect card for Silence Priest. Really annoying card to deal with in a aggro based deck, and honestly probably a perfect target for the card that we last went over, because this does allow you to curve into that incredibly well, and you will still end up with a 5/1 on board, which is absolutely insane. Though the Undead Rager or Scourge Rager, whatever it is, I think is going to be probably a lot better than using these 2 cards in combination outside of a Silence Priest deck. But given the fact that we're hitting this critical mass of really good minions to actually hit with a Silence or Priest, I do think a aggro-based Silence Priest deck might come into fruition. I've done a few of those in the past, and they've always felt relatively strong, only missing 1 or 2 more silences, or even just one or two more really good targets. And this is a really good target for really cheap. All right, for the next card revealed, it is Nerubian Visor, which is a 3-cost to attack 4 HP undead minion that has the battle cry discover a spell. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, it costs 2 less. For any undead decks, this is basically a better school teacher, as this does allow you to get a discount on whatever spell that you're actually discovering. There are cases where school teacher in theory could be a little bit better than a card like this because it does give you additional body compared to this, but I do think this one will probably see a lot of play because school teacher already does, and it serves a very similar purpose. There are a bunch of really good 3-cost minions right now that do something very similar but don't give you some type of upside if you have a condition fulfilled. This basically has a better stat line than any of those minions, and it also has the added benefit of having a mana cheat baked into it, which is always a really good sign for any type of card. For the next one, it is going to be Shatter Skin Gargoyle, which is a 6-cost undead minion with 4 attack, 6 HP. Taunt, Death Rattle, deal 4 damage to a random enemy. I think this one is probably just a pack filler when it comes to an undead minion. If we see any type of mana cheat in any type of class for undead minions, then this might see a little bit of play, but outside of that, I don't see a world where this sees too much play. It could be a really good target for maybe a Taunt Warrior deck, which I've been trying to make work for, I don't know, 2-3 expansions at this point. But again, outside of some way to actually mana sheet this out, I don't think this one is going to be that playable. All right, for the next card revealed, it is Vicryl Necrolite, which is a 2-cost to attack 2 HP undead minion. Battle Cry, give a friendly minion Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 zombie with Rush. Just a generic, really good thing for any type of undead synergy that you really want to use this with. It does require you to have a body on board, but honestly, that isn't really that too hard of a requirement if you use this in any type of undead synergy class, at least from what we've seen so far. Especially in Death Knight, if you use this in combination with their hero power, you instantly get the 2/2 zombie with Rush. Thus, you can actually remove maybe 2 things off of the board for the price of 2 mana, which actually isn't that bad. And it also gives you a bunch of additional corpses, which could be used for any corpse synergy that you have. The next card revealed is Umbral Geist, which is a 2-cost 3 attack 1 HP undead minion. Death Rattle, add a random shadow spell to your hand. I'm assuming most classes are going to get shadow spells in this set, which means a card like this is going to be incredibly inconsistent. But in a aggro undead deck, this could still see a lot of play just because it gives you additional advantage whenever it does die. It has really nice stats for a aggro card, and has a bunch of additional synergy with all the other undead synergistic cards that we will be seeing within this set. The next card is Banshee, which is a 1-cost to attack 1 HP undead minion. Death Rattle, give a random friendly undead +2/+1. I don't like cards like this that gives another random minion additional attack or HP, just because it feels like this card would be a little bit too slow. I know this is a 1-drop, so it wouldn't be the slowest thing in the world, but you're not going to want to actually put this down on turn 1 because you don't have an additional minion to back it up, get the buff actually out. And because there are now 3 classes that can actually deal with this on turn 2 using their own hero powers, then you're definitely not going to want to put it down on turn 1. You would want to put it down on turn 2. And by then, your opponent will probably have some additional minions, which means that this card will just instantly die and not give a buff to any of your other minions. It'll probably always be the target that your opponent tries to target last, just so they don't give you any type of advantage off of the buffs. Now, if Arms Dealer gave Rush along with the +1 attack, then this card was really, really playable, but it doesn't, so I don't think this one will see that much play. All right, the next card is Flesh Behemoth, which is a 9-cost 4 attack 8 HP undead minion. Taunt, Death Rattle, draw another undead, and summon a copy of it. Basically, just a really good replacing minion. However, it does have 9 mana, which makes it a lot less playable than it would normally be in any other situation. I get why they're going for 9 mana instead of lower, just because of the fact of getting an additional undead minion out of your deck, and then making a copy of it could be incredibly, incredibly impactful, which means I really don't think this one will see play just because of its cost. If it costs maybe like 6 and then only could summon a undead minion that cost 5 or less, then it might actually be a lot more playable. But as it currently stands, this card just costs a little bit too much in my opinion, unless you use it in some type of Vander deck where you're trying to discount a bunch of really high cost undeads. And because we haven't really seen too many high cost undeads, I don't know how playable this is going to be if you can't get some additional really big value out of replacing whatever card you are. Maybe a revive priest deck might come back because of cards like this, and we do know priest is going to get a necromancer based theme in the set. However, again, without seeing some of the class cards, I don't think this one will see much play. The next card revealed is Infectious Ghoul, which is a 5 cost 5 attack 4 HP undead minion. Death Rattle, give a friendly minion Death Rattle, summon an Infectious Ghoul. This is basically Greybow for any class instead of just Druid, which makes it actually pretty good, I would say. It does cost only 5, which means it could be used as a card to instantly always have a 5/4 on the board in a aggro based deck. I do think this one will probably see a lot of play just because of how difficult it is going to be to remove a card like this off of the board, at least permanently, unless you run some type of silence in your deck, which most classes aren't going to do. Though there are a bunch of Death Rattle synergies within this set that might make some things like Suffocating Starfish actually a lot more playable than they currently are, because as it currently stands, a lot of the really powerful effects in Hearthstone are battle cries. However, it does look like this set is trying to bring Death Rattles back with a vengeance, and cards like this will probably make silences a lot more common within people's decks. The next card revealed is Tenacious Silin, which is a 5 cost 4 attack 6 HP undead minion. Lifesteal, whenever this attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. When it comes to 5 drops, this is actually a pretty strong 5 drop, I would say. It gives a aggro deck some type of self healing, which is something that most decks tend to be missing a lot. It also gives you basically +6 attack instead of 4 attack whenever you do attack into your opponent's hero, which is absolutely insane. It might be a little bit too slow just because it is a 5 cost card, but again, you could run it in a aggro deck. It really just depends on what other 5 drops you would rather run. The last card that we just went over might be a lot better than running something like this in a aggro based deck, but if you have ways to duplicate this card and buff it up by a bunch, then this card will be incredibly playable. You can also discount it using things like Vander because it does cost 5, and it does have the undead tag, so I wouldn't be shocked if we do see a class that has some type of mana cheat for undeads. But until we do see some of the class support, this card will either be really good or it'll be just a average card at best. The next card revealed is Plague Spreader, which is a 4 cost 4 attack 4 HP undead minion. Death Rattle, transform a random minion in your opponent's hand into a Plague Spreader. Now, this might be just some weird coincidence, but in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a card called Plague Spreader Zombie, which looks eerily similar to this card in particular. It doesn't do this exact thing, but it's kind of interesting that they decided to choose this name for this card. It's a card that is going to be incredibly annoying to deal with because if you do have ways to duplicate this card, you could just turn off whatever synergy your opponent's actually dealing with, unless you are also going to be a undead based class. It also kills basically any possibility of any real big combo decks to be really consistent. There is enough of this combo hate in Standard Hearthstone that you could just basically make a deck centered around all these cards now. And honestly, this is probably one of the better ones that we've actually seen in this set in particular, because it does allow you to get advantage off of the Plague Spreader whenever your opponent does play it too, because then you can use it for your additional undead synergy later in the game with other cards that you might normally just be running because you're playing a bunch of undeads. I don't see a world where this doesn't see play if you are going to try to make some style of deck like that actually fully function. But at the same time, in a normal deck, this might be incredibly bad because you could be giving a aggro deck a 4/4, which is not the best thing in the world to do. And if you don't have any type of silence to deal with this, this is just going to be a problem for both you and the opponent. All right, now for the last legendary for the neutral set, Bonelord Frostwhisper. He is a doozy. This card is a 6 cost undead minion with 6 attack, 6 HP, death rattle for the rest of the game. Your first card each turn costs 0. You die in 3 turns. Now, first thing I should point out is he is the undead version of Raw's Frostwhisper that we saw in Skullmance. This appearance is more in line with his World of Warcraft appearance too, which is actually pretty cool that we're seeing a reoccurring character. But this card makes me ask a bunch of questions. First of all, does the timer reset whenever you play down an additional copy and then it dies? Because if it does, this is incredibly useful. Second off, does it count your opponent's turns instead of just your own turns? Because that makes the turn timer a lot slower if you try to trigger the death rattle on your own turn. Third, does it kill you at the start of the turn that it hits 0, or does it kill you whenever you end your turn? Because that also may or may not give you additional turn, depending on how it actually works. And finally, why is it 3 turns? Most decks that would actually want to use a card like this only really need 1 turn of a 0 mana cost card. In particular, a certain very annoying to deal with 3-card combo basically becomes a 4-card combo with this card. The combo in question is Kelthus, Bran, and Sire Denathrius. Because as it turns out, if you make any card that makes any other card cost 0, even if it is for a limited amount of time, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous when you have really high impactful Battlecry minions in combination with a card that duplicates any Battlecries that you play down while it's on the board. It's something that they seem not to be learning the lesson with, and while this does give you a 3-turn clock whenever you do trigger its death rattle, that should be enough to actually get whatever big combo that you actually need to get off in a turn or 2 if you already have the other cards in your hand. It also explains why we're seeing all the hand hate if a card like this is going to be in rotation. I do feel really bad for all the evolved shamans who are going to evolve into this and then instantly lose the game because they have no way to actually back this up with some really high impactful cards that they could use for a 0-cost card. And in Wild, this is going to be incredibly annoying to deal with because there's a bunch of cards that will give your opponent this, and then you just basically put them on a 3-turn clock. It kind of serves a similar purpose to Yu-Gi-Oh's Final Countdown in Wild, in my opinion, where it's a card that could be used as a win condition, but it is usually a little bit too slow. But if you manage to do it, you're going to have an incredibly funny story to tell everyone else. Alright, those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know down below which ones you're most looking forward to actually using. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye.